Good evening. It's 6 p.m. We'll call this meeting to order. And I want it to be noted that our mayor is excused this evening. So if you'd join me, we'll stand for the pledge and then the opening prayer. The pledge will be offered by Councilman Lopez, and then the opening prayer, Councilman Seal.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Father in heaven, as we bow our heads at the beginning of our city council meeting, we wish to express gratitude for all of our many blessings. We're grateful for this free land in which we live, for this beautiful city where we reside. Father, we're grateful for those who work to protect our freedoms. We're grateful for our first responders. We ask you to be with them and bless them. Bless their families in their absence. We ask you to bless us this evening, that we'll be able to discuss those things that will help to enhance the area where we live, be of benefit to those whom we serve. Ask a special blessing upon those who have cause to mourn at this time. Ask a blessing upon Mayor Couch, that his recovery will be rapid and complete. And again, we ask us to bless us that we'll be able to know those things that we should do. Help those whom we serve. We pray for this in Jesus Christ. Amen.
And thank you, guys. Okay, the next item, Tammy, do we have any comments from the citizens on agenda items? No? And then non-agenda items? No? Then we'll go ahead and move on to item number 7, the minutes from January 10th, the council minutes. Any discussion on them?
I make the motion, we approve the minutes from January 10th, 2022.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2022. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, the PSPRS. This is for direction. And John?
Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of council. Tonight, we're going to be going over PSPRS, the unfunded liability issue again. We've kind of tread this ground several times. So the presentation that I will be giving will look familiar to you, although there would be some updated numbers in it. Also, I just wanted to make you aware that we have Claude Lockhart and we have Mark Reeder on the phone. If they are our bond counsel, they worked with us when we did the police bond issuance. So if there are any questions during or after the presentation of a technical nature, they can kind of lend a hand and answer some of those questions. So without any further ado, what I'm going to do is go through the presentation. Again, it probably will look somewhat familiar to you, but I think it's worth retreading. So again, as you're aware, the city currently has an unfunded liability associated with our PSPRS retirement pool. Currently, about 32% of our fund is funded and about 68% is unfunded, which is approximately $13.1 million. PSPRS charges us 7% rate of return, basically saying these monies that aren't in the pool, that aren't earning the interest that we get on average over an extended period of time, they average it out over time, we're going to charge you that 7% on that unfunded portion, so that happens on an annual basis. This slide, although the colors don't come out very well, the main takeaway here, because this is somewhat busy, the actuarial unfunded liability at 68.2%, second row from the top. Basically, these are actual numbers over time, and you can see from 2013 to 2021, the amount of the unfunded liability grew substantially from 5.7 to $13.1 million. The bottom portion of this table represents our payment on that unfunded and funded liability. Again, the center row unfunded liability cost is what we've been paying on that unfunded portion on top. Again, we started out at 300,000, we're now, well, the last year of actuals, 2021, was 671,000. So as you can see, generally speaking, the trend on the payment for it has risen. Unfortunately, the amount we owe has also risen. So even though we're paying more, we're not gaining any ground on the unfunded portion. So, because of that trend, and because we're not alone, basically, in fact, the state has a bill right now where they are now in the process of funding their unfunded liability. So they are in the process of allocating monies in the upcoming budget to pay off those portions of the state unfunded liability that they owe. So the idea that somehow they may address us is probably not likely going to happen. So we have a couple of options. One option is to pursue the PSPRS actuarial plan, and the other option is to pursue the bond that we've discussed on a number of occasions. So essentially pros and cons. The pros of the PSPRS funding option, relatively speaking, there really aren't any. It is what it is, but it's a growing bill over time, and it will absorb more and more of your ongoing revenue stream, so there's not much of a benefit there. Cons, obviously, is that you're carrying that unfunded liability and the 7% premium that you pay on that unfunded liability year over year. There's some market actuarial risk. Large payments in later years, really, these last two items, the large payment in the later years and the uncertain impact operationally, those are of most concern, right? Because what will happen is your ongoing revenue stream will be impacted, which will then leave less money available to do your normal day-to-day operations. The bonding option, the pros, obviously, that the interest rate right now still, even though they've risen some, is a better deal, if you will, than the 7% you're being charged by the state. We're looking at about 3.5%, and obviously once we go through, if we go through with bonding, we'll get a more accurate number, but it should be in that neighborhood. Obviously, 3.5% is less than 7. The other benefit is that you have a predictable payment schedule. Again, this is really important because it makes your budgeting be predictable. That's what you want. You want predictability and that ongoing expenditure pattern in your ongoing day-to-day expenditures. Obviously, the unfunded liability is eliminated up front, which eliminates that 7%, 7.3% premium you pay. The cons, obviously, there is a cost to bond issuance, and it's about $230,000. And then you still are subject to market risk. But the probabilities of you having an issue on the market end are pretty slim based on the past 30 years of performance. The only time the bond becomes an issue is if the rate of return through the state is less than what you paid on the bond, which basically means you're paying more for that money you borrowed than the state would have charged you for that payment. The 7% equivalent would have to be below 3%. In the past 30 years, that really hasn't happened, even with the Great Recession, and these numbers are usually averaged over a 10-year period, so the probability of hitting that again is not high.
Sorry to interrupt, John, but just to clarify, not only is that not likely, but it would have to stay that way for a quite extended period of time to make any difference.
That's correct. It would have to stay there.
Even if it went below 3.5 for a short period of time, it's not
That's correct.
going to impact us.
Vice Mayor Ortega, Councilman Hemphill, yeah, a lot of these numbers, they do spread them out. They smooth them in various ways. And part of that is so you're not chasing this thing up and down. Obviously, every year you're going to get different rates of return. So rather than chase those numbers, they average them out over a period of time.
And the 230,000, that's a one-time charge?
That's correct. So once again, we have our latest, greatest version of the payback options. This graph essentially represents the two payment options. The green is the bond, and as you can see, the payment is just under $800,000, and it is locked in for a 24-year period. In the latest version of PSPRS's payback, puts you up in the $1.5 million range in the out years. So very quickly, you can see right out of the gate, the amount of money that you would pay on an annual basis would exceed the amount of money that you would pay on the bond. And again, this represents money coming out of your ongoing expenditure pattern, which then impacts your ability to pay for other things. On the bottom, you can see PSPRS, the payment schedule would be 31 million, the bond would be 18. So over the period of that bond, you would save about $12.7 million over that 24-year period. So again, this is total bond amount. It's a little bit less than the 13.1 million, again, because of smoothing in that there's some unrealized unfunded liability that right now is working in our favor. So it's about $1 million or so that it's something less than the 13.1 million. Also includes the 230K. It's for 24 years. The annual payments are approximately $760,000 a year. Which right now would represent, at least the last year of actuals, probably another 100,000. We do have some data in here that Cabrina pulled together that shows that potentially in the coming budget cycle, the amount that we would pay to the state would actually exceed this amount already. And it's, again, it's part of that volatility that occurs.
Mr. Casal, is the state considering doing the bond too or no, or?
Vice Mayor Ortega, Councilman Andazola, I'm not sure what the method they're considering. I don't know if they're paying. The state has done well in the past few years, so I'm not sure if the method is just them using reserves or if they're going to use some kind of bond issuance. I don't know the details on it. Also, as we've discussed in the past, one of the recommendations that you get with these bonds is that you use $1 million or thereabouts, depending on the size of the issuance. For us, it would be about $1 million. That you have this in a contingency to cover volatility in the pool going forward. So if we have significant changes in the market, you would have a reserve and we would have a restricted fund balance that would be set aside for that purpose that would cover you if you had some large fluctuation. As part of doing the bond is that you're basically paying for the unfunded liability. Your obligation to manage the pool continues, just like you pay every year for ASRS, you're going to continue to pay for PSPRS. And so it's an ongoing cost of doing business. Now, because of the financial position we find ourselves in, rather than do what other communities have had to do, which is to make that reserve part of the bond issuance and then you pay interest on it, we would be in a position, if council decided to do so, to be able to set that money aside. And it doesn't have to be $1 million. It could be some amount that we decide on, but it should be around that amount, I think, to play it safe. You would be able to put that money aside on your own, and your money would earn interest rather than pay it. So we should have some kind of contingency that we set aside. But again, it would be a restricted fund balance, and it would only be used for the purpose of supporting the PSPRS pool. So again, impact on the annual operating budget will be the difference between the bond service, the debt service payment on the bond, and what you're already paying. So it's not like the debt service payment is a new expense to you. You're already paying, as you saw, last year of actuals was $650,000 towards that unfunded liability already. So if you have a $750,000 bond payment, the additional cost to you would just be the $100,000. And then since the debt service payment on the bond are level and the cost of the unfunded liability would continue to grow, essentially the cost to you over time would be reduced. And then Cabrina added this. This is budgeted. The other numbers that we've shown up to this point have been actuals. So for FY22, if you read this vertically, you can see the normal cost is the $135.50. The unfunded portion was $593,330 for a total of $724. Estimates right now are showing that our exposure in 2023 would be $809,000 on the unfunded, which would exceed the bond payment already for a total cost of $933,000. The last two columns provide you with an example now of what the bond would do. So you still have your ongoing portion, you still have your 123. Obviously, you would not have an unfunded liability to the state. You would have your payment to the bond, the $76,000. So the difference right out of the gate in year one would be about a $45,000 savings if this bond number, the budgeted number holds, or not the bond, but the PRS number holds up as a budgeted number going forward. And again, there is this volatility. You can see it in the graph. So that's part of the thing that is a difficulty for for us is that volatility in the PSPRS method of repayment versus what is more of a certain payment over the 24 years using the bond. And again, this is probably not easy to see, but essentially, this is the bond, this is the amortization schedule. So again, that third column would be your debt service payments of about $765,000. As you can see, they're relatively consistent throughout the life of the bond.
That, in funded city payroll contribution, it's a footnote you have underneath the last page.
Yeah,
That goes up to 75.10.
yes.
Is that gonna vary also?
It will vary over time, yeah,
'Cause-
and as it is there.
As it is there. And then so our normal city payroll contribution right now, all our stuff is 10.46%. Is that what that says?
It is, except that's an error, it should be 11.33, so we're going to the 11.18 actually in the current budget. So it actually would go from 11.33 down to 11.18.
So, and that percentage is when we do our budget all the way around, 11% is normally for payroll.
Yes, that is the current
At this
percentage that is charged to the payroll to pay on the pool for the funded portion.
Just in this, not overall across the city.
Just for
Just for this,
PSPRS
okay.
salary payroll contributions. This is, just like if you had ASRS, right? There's a percentage that the state charges us on our payroll contributions that we fund, and that amount has gone up. I think I was paying 3% when I got in the system. It's, I don't know, what is it, 12? Yeah, so these are constantly in flux for a couple of reasons. One, number of people in the system, and two, whatever the market's doing, so it affects return on investment. So these percentages would continue to fluctuate up and down depending on what the market did, and in the case of PSPRS, because it's more locally based, what we did with our staff locally.
Right now, we're kind of watching how we hire new officers because they come along with their past retirement stuff. How many more years we gotta go before we can start, that won't bother us as much?
Well, it depends on the officers that you hire. Some, depending on the hire, if they're tier 1 or tier 2, could still potentially impact us. Tier 3 hires should not.
There'll never be an end to, because if we hire experienced officers, right now they come with, we inherit their retirement.
Yes, in some
I
cases.
thought there was a year or date that was gonna be coming forward,
2017,
that was
yeah.
gonna end,
2017, I think, was the year.
2017.
Yeah.
Then we can begin to hire experienced officers again if need be.
As long as it's after 2017.
Yes, as long as their hire date into the PSPRS is after 2017,
Oh, they get
then
in.
you would be in tier 3. Anything that hired in before 2017 is in tier 1 and 2.
So it's still gonna haunt us a little bit, okay.
And you still have people that are in the retirement system that will be getting paid in that way. So as I stated, paying off the pre-existing unfunded liability does not mean that you don't have an obligation to maintain the pool going forward. There will always be fluctuations in the pool. Those rates will always be in flux. But hopefully you won't end up with a $13 million bill that you're trying to catch up on. You would be managing those fluctuations in real time. And if any of them got to be of a sizable nature, then that reserve fund balance that we were talking about that we set aside could be used to offset that. And then additional revenues coming back into the city in future years, you could replenish that fund and get it ready for the next downturn. But again, you would only access that if you really had a significant downturn. Normally, during a normal year, you would just pay it with ongoing revenue.
You're gonna let it accumulate interest. What you gonna do with the interest? Just accumulate it? On that $1 million that you have in reserve?
Well, it'd be in our LGIP like any other, it would be something that, like any of our the local government investment pool, we would earn interest on the money, it would be our money.
And we're gonna leave it there? We're
Yeah,
not
I
gonna
think-
take out the interest and add it to our general fund. If we make interest on it, it
We
continues to
could.
build.
Or you could let that interest go to the general fund.
Okay,
Do
what-
it either way.
What's your plan? Put it in the general fund?
I would.
You'd like to, okay. Can't say I blame you, but I just wanna make sure that's what
Yeah.
you got up your sleeve, okay?
And we could make that decision. You as a council could decide what direction you wanted that money to go. If you wanted to stay in that way, I think we would be able to do that, correct? Yeah.
Okay, we have that option, okay.
Does anybody else have any comments on, or questions? I know what I'd like to say myself is that I haven't changed my thoughts from the many times we talked about this. I'm for the bonding option myself. That's where I'm at.
I have been as well, Vice Mayor, from the beginning, pretty much. And
Vice Mayor, I'm with you too on that, with the bonding.
I've been hesitant in the past, well, probably 3 years now. But it's piling up on us. And if we can lock in a rate, sure wish it'd have been less than 3.5 possibly. And we're working on it, it kind of makes sense now.
I think
It
we
does
should,
make sense, not kind of.
I think we should have done it the first time we heard about it, so.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's already cost us percentage-wise, and I don't see it getting any better.
There's nothing but air out there that rates are gonna go, interest rates are gonna go up, so how long is it gonna take us to enact it if we go forward? Is that a question for these two?
Yeah, Vice Mayor, Councilman Lopez, we can move pretty quickly on this, and perhaps, Mark, do you want to chime in and give an idea of time frame on that?
Sure, I can. Thank you, John. Mr. Vice Mayor, members of the council, good evening. Thanks for letting us dial in. As far as moving forward expeditiously, that's very doable. And with direction from the city council, we can probably get this done in somewhere around 45 days-ish. And we will move as quickly as we can and try to lock into a very low interest rate for your city. We're looking forward to that. But to answer your question, I think 45 days or so is very manageable.
Because we do have a very good credit score.
You do.
Yes,
You
we
have
do.
a very good credit.
Okay.
And Vice Mayor and Council, I just wanted to say that I was able to talk to the mayor today, and he wanted me to let you know that he supports doing the bond for PSPRS as well. So I wanted to just let you know that he had sent that along.
Well, then, John, do you have enough direction?
I do. So I think what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and start the paperwork, and then we would come back like we did with WIFA, with a loan package for council to actually approve.
And this will all be done with just council vote?
Yeah, at that time.
Yeah, okay. All right. Anything else? Any other comments or?
Good. I'm fine. Mayor,
Oh,
Vice
okay.
Mayor.
Gene, have anything to say?
Okay, then we'll move on to item number.
Thank you, gentlemen. You can exit at this point.
Thank you, John.
All right.
Thanks, Claude.
Thank you, Claude.
Then we'll move on to item number 3. That's the airport manager. And this is for Lance.
Vice Mayor, members of council, I just wanted to do a bit of an introduction on the airport item, and then if you have questions regarding any of the reclass information regarding positions, then Lance will take care of that for you. So I just wanted to give a little background on this because I think this has been a while coming, but I wanted to provide some context as well. The airport manager idea of bringing an airport manager on board and using an existing position is something that in the past year and a half, Lance and I have spent a lot of time on the airport, as has the council. And in that time, we have been working across the board at the airport, and this position is part of an overall strategy that we've been using to address the airport and the needs at the airport and kind of getting things more up to speed. So one of the things that we've done so far is recently we replaced all the card readers at the airport. The card readers were not working, so now we actually have some security. We've issued fobs. Those fobs are being checked at Public Works, so we're aware of what companies and what personnel have access to the airport, so that's being managed. We also have a water project. We moved some money up in the CIP. We had an issue some time ago about building a hangar. We didn't have the water pressure to follow the code and put essentially a sprinkler system in that building. So we are working right now with Bowman to design a project that will get us water to the airport and some pressure that will allow us to do some fire suppression up there and also run some additional lines. We also are in the process of pursuing an inspection program. So we have been having people go to the airport and meet with the various tenants there and do some inspections on site. So we're going there, checking their buildings and making sure things are up to code. So that's an ongoing process. We are also in the process of doing legal review of our documents for the airport, which include both the minimum operating standards and also the rules and regulations. We put money in this year's budget, so we are in the process of working with our consultant to have those documents redone. It'll be a relatively lengthy process, but again, I think it puts us in a much better position down the road in terms of managing the airport and having FAA regulations that are current and up to date. So with that said, and one last item is we also have been looking at, and you will get one of those, I believe, this evening, our lease agreements, because we obviously have had some issues there as well. And so we've been working with our attorney to tighten up the language in those lease agreements to make them more legally defensible down the road. So that's also part of the ongoing process. So again, I wanted you to understand the request for this position in the much broader context of the work that's going on at the airport. And you know, I've had some discussions and people have noted the amount of duties that are assigned to this individual. But again, I think that there are some other opportunities, even economic development opportunities, working with our community development department, that maybe we can try to get our airport more on the radar, if you will, airport humor, so that we can do some economic development out there and see if we can get some more interest in the airport and getting some additional tenants out there. So again, I just wanted you to see this position in a broader context that we're pursuing activities at the airport.
You know, John, I'm glad to see that we're on the right track now. We got, you know, we're focused. I'm glad to see that, hear that.
Do we need a motion, Vice Mayor, or?
Yeah?
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we go ahead and approve the creation of the airport manager position within the Public Works Department.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the airport manager position. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, thank you. Now we'll move on to item 8, number 1, the Southwest Public Power Agency, APPA. It's a request to adopt resolution number R22-002. Jason?
Jason, Vice Mayor Jason's not here tonight, so I'm going to run with this one as well. This is just, obviously, you know, we hire a utility director, and obviously part of his duties are to deal with SPA. So what we're doing is simply updating the board membership. So Jason will be the main member of the SPA board. I will be the alternate. Jason and I have been working very closely. I'm not stepping aside or walking away from SPA or the utility function. So Jason and I have been meeting and generating some ideas. SPA is, as you all well know, a very challenging organization to work with. And so I certainly wouldn't send Jason in there just cold to try and kind of navigate that terrain. So again, he will be the main board member. I will be the alternate, but I will still be attending all the meetings and working with Jason on this.
Okay, any questions, anybody?
All right. You said everything I had concerns about, so it's a moving target, this board. And so I'm glad you're gonna stay with it also, because Jason's still new to me, and this is quite a challenge for him, so we're going forward with it.
Vice Mayor, I'll go ahead and go with the motion to approve and adopt the resolution R 22-002, a resolution that's authorizing the appointment of Jason Brimhall, Utilities Director of the City of Safford, as a representative and member of SPA.
We have a second?
Second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Did
Opposed?
he read all yours, or he? Good, okay.
Sorry.
It was a runaway.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, we'll go to item number 9, the Muni Gas. That's a request for the mayor and the city council to approve the revised contract. John, you can bring that one too? Oh, okay.
I'll take over that today. We received a revised Muni Gas contract due to February's polar vortex. The gas prices increased from $2.71 per MMBTU to almost $24 per MMBTU. This is for pretty much everywhere around. And so this caused a lot of gas companies to have a substantial gas bill. And a lot of these companies are liable, like us, to pay our gas bill. Unfortunately, a lot of them didn't have that much money in their bank account, so it kind of put a hindrance on all of them, and it put a bigger hindrance on Muni Gas to cover all that just in case they couldn't pay. So in order to protect us, Muni Gas changed their contract, and so the changes made are that Muni Gas will discount all of our gas that we purchase, and they'll bill us up to that 300% price point, and after that we'll get whatever's left over billed from BP, which is our gas supplier. So Muni Gas is actually a company of 80 utilities that come together to purchase gas, and those 80 utilities combined together give us a discount on gas, and we get a discount of about 30 cents per MMBTU on gas. And so far, since we've joined them, we've saved over $1 million. And what this will do is, it's not gonna change our liability, it's not gonna change our discount. The only thing that's gonna happen is if that gas price shoots up again really high, anything that's over that 300 price point will just get a separate bill from BP. And that's pretty much the gist of it. Do you guys have any questions on that?
But anything over the certain point that you were talking about that we have to pay, we don't get 30 cents.
That we get discount on everything.
Everything.
We get a discount on how much we use. We're just talking about the actual cash price. So the cash price, if our normal bill is $10, we get a 30-cent discount, correct? If that bill shoots up to that 300%, past that 300%, where our gas price is $30, so we'll pay our $10 and get our discount on it. But whatever is over that, the $20, we'll have to just pay it straight to BP. It'll still be discounted because the entire price is $30. We'll still get our discount on everything we buy. It's just we'll have to pay another company, our original company, instead of going through Muni Gas. When this vortex hit the city of Safford, had a bigger gas bill than normal. We were at the highest it hit was about 175% is what we paid. So it never even hit that 300%. We'll still get our discount. We'll still pay. Our liability is not changed. It's just where we get our bill from if that price hits that much.
It still sounds like you said we weren't getting a discount
No,
on anything
we are.
over.
We are getting a discount on that. We're just talking about anything over that 300%. We'll get a bill from from BP instead of Muni Gas. So we'll get
the discount.
We'll get the 300%. Yeah, we'll get 300% with the discount, and anything over that, we'll get that price from BP. So the price is always going to be the same. We'll get our discount on anything we use, but anything over a certain amount, they'll only hold up to 300% of what we normally pay, and anything over that we'll have to pay straight to BP. And actually, this has only happened, Muni Gas did some research. They went all the way back to 2006 researching prices. This has never happened to them. And this was the first time since 2006 that they could find that this has ever happened. And luckily, with our purchasing practices and hedging, we didn't even see very much of an effect on this. So our price did go up about 75%. But that was it for that 1 month, for that one time. But luckily, we hedged gas, and so that saved us quite a bit of money. A lot of other companies didn't. I've seen some companies that were paying a normal gas bill of $40,000 that went up into hundreds of thousands. So they were really, hard struck. So on this, it will not change our liability. It won't pretty much change anything. The only thing is it's just keeping our discount. If we were to not pass this and not go on, what would happen is Munigas would have to get more creditors to be able to cover this amount. And so they would have to actually drop our discount to say maybe 20 cents or 25 cents. So that's the effect of them not passing it. 80 utilities that are on here, over 50% of them have already passed this and agreed to the new contract.
This is housekeeping for them.
It's housekeeping for them and holding, if we want to keep our normal discount and we don't have to change it, then we can agree to this contract. There are other companies that do this. We've looked into them. Some of these companies, they give you a swing rate. They don't cover 100% of the gas. This is the only company that I've found so far that actually does that.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? If not, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion, we approve the revised Mingus contract.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to revise the Muni Gas contract. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Then we'll go to item number 2. That's airport land lease agreement.
Vice Mayor and Council, we're here seeking approval to enter into a new contract with Aaron Motes at the airport. This will be for a new lease. He wants to construct a hangar. He's looking for a 60 by 70 land lease. This will be the furthest east section. You should have an exhibit of it. This will be charged out at the Resolution 15-20 at 12 cents per square foot, escalated annually at 3%, resulting in a $504 annual payment and a 20-year lease. With that, I'll answer any questions you guys may have.
Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
All right. Then do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the land lease agreement at the airport. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, and we'll move on to item number 3, the flat roof repairs.
So we're also here seeking approval to enter into a contract for Progressive Roofing. We had a CIP project this year to analyze all the flat roofs and recommended repairs. We've been working with the state on-call. It's Progressive. He supplied an analysis for free of charge to us at the city. He's analyzed 9 of our roof systems, and 7 of them have received a fail rating. He's actually found 3 buildings that had excessive hail damage. We've been working with our insurance adjuster, and they're willing to exercise an insurance claim on those 3 buildings. That'll be the cluster, City Hall, the fire station, and the magistrate. So what that does is that'll result in the roof repairs of a $435,000 is what he's estimated those repair costs to be for his company. The insurance claim is willing to adjust that to $200,000 on those 3 buildings, resulting in $237,000 cost for the 7 system repair. Right now, our CIP budget is $250,000, so we'll be slightly below that in cost. The one thing that Progressive has done is they've given us a couple different options for a 10-year roof system versus a 20-year roof system. Our recommendation is to go with the 20-year roof system, just not knowing what we're going to wind up doing with a lot of the buildings. There are certain buildings that may make sense to do at a 10-year lifespan, depending on what we want to do in development from the city council going forward. So, with that being said, have you guys got any questions for me?
You have a priority on which buildings you want to do first?
We could discuss that and we can come together. It'd be my recommendation, because we're exercising that claim on the insurance, to focus on those areas, so we're not extending that closure on their insurance claim. There's a few others. There's an electrical substation that's getting water damage into it. It's pretty significantly compromised. But we could discuss where we'd want to go and what sequence, so.
You got a lot of linemen that can do that roof. They'll be all right with it. We'll do it in-house, what do you think? But also, something that was noted in all your stuff was the infrastructure that's on these roofs. All the conduit, junction boxes, some of them are suggested to be rerouted. Who's doing that?
So that's one thing that Progressive is willing to work with us on. We're gonna do that internally to cost save on some of that. So yeah, we'll take on some of the challenges of the wiring, the electrical, whatever we can do to kind of limit those costs. We'll do it internally, so.
Okay, so the price you quoted could still go up a little more, or talked about. Okay. Now, some of the other things we have up there, the air conditioning units and things like that, because it's just like a road. We repave a road and a week later we go dig it up.
Yep.
Is there anything on them roofs you're gonna be looking at that need replaced now if we're gonna go 20 years? Air conditioning, you had one of the turnstiles, everything.
We didn't do an analysis on the air conditionings. It's probably a good question. Everything up to this point has been working. We could do a more thorough analysis on it, but that's not part of the cost in which we included in this.
Okay,
So.
I'm just hoping we don't get blindsided and cut up the roof at the end.
It's a good idea, Councilman.
Yep, good comment.
I think that's all I have, sir.
Anybody else have anything?
Vice Mayor, I make the motion that we approve the contract with Progressive Roofing.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the contract with Progressive. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Then we'll go move on to item number 10, the reports. Had a chance to review the P-card reports. Any comments or questions? If not, we'll move on to the expenses over 5,000.
I will have some, but I'm gonna forward them to the manager, because this is the end of the year too. We're beginning a new budget season, so some of these need to be revised, some of the purchases, so I'll talk with the manager later.
Okay, then revenue over 5, same thing? Okay, then. We'll go ahead and move on to item number 11, the announcement of current events. Any announcements? And we'll move on to item number 12, a report on operational items. Golly, it's really moving. Then we'll close the regular meeting and reconvene for a council workshop. What, about 10 minutes, little break? Okay.
The mayor would be proud of you.
Huh?
The mayor would be proud of you.
Yeah, I know, we'll call him.
Yes, sir.
Sabrina's over there, oh, you missed. She's an official timekeeper.
Okay, we're gonna convene into our council work session. Tonight, we'll be discussing budget priorities. John, you wanna get us going on this?
Sure. Vice Mayor, members of council. Every year, staff inquires of council what their priorities are for the upcoming year. If you recalled, last year I introduced what I call a budget guidance document to the process, and it laid out some things that are more perfunctory, like compensation, technology, things that you see all the time. And then the opportunity is there for council to bring to the fore anything that they want to pursue, whether it be something that's ongoing or new items that they want us to pursue in the upcoming year. So basically, that's what this conversation is all about. I sent some materials out probably 2 weeks ago now, or thereabouts, to kind of give you a heads up that it was coming, give you time to think about anything that might be of interest. Again, in my conversations with the mayor earlier today, he reiterated his support for parks and recreational amenities and activities, so that's an item that is of interest to the mayor. And once I get feedback from the council, we will provide you once again with a budget guidance document that is there for your review and your alteration. So tonight, the idea is to kind of give you the floor and let you talk amongst yourselves and figure out what priorities you may have for the upcoming budget cycle.
John, I got a question. What about the bike routes? Did we find anything about that?
They should be part of the Parks and Recreation presentation. So part of the process that they went through, they started off with a brainstorming session that kind of covered the gambit from all kinds of different ideas in terms of parks and recreation. And so as part of that presentation, the bike pass would probably be something that will be on there as a
Okay, all right.
recommendation.
Just wanted to make sure, because
Yeah.
I got a question.
Yeah, I did pass along your request.
Thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was too, about even the striping, along the highway and that, because we've talked about that numerous times. Good, thanks.
Silence is golden. So again, just to kind of give you some ideas, areas that we looked at in past years included things like strategic planning concepts. We looked at various fiscal management things. So for example, if you want to have a reserve fund for the bond, we could do that. The other idea that I was knocking around that I might as well put out there now is that we maybe do what I would call a stabilization fund or a rainy day fund that we could put in place in the general fund. It also would be a restricted reserve where council would decide on an amount. They would also decide on a process for usage, so that if we hit an economic downturn, we would have this money set aside that we could access to balance the ongoing operation, and then we would have a process by which we paid ourselves back. It's not uncommon to do that, and it does help in stabilizing your ongoing operation. We do have a substantial reserve in the general fund that we've met our policy. Generally speaking, those reserves kind of stay where they are. It would have to get pretty awful for us to go ahead and use those. So sometimes it's good to have that buffer in between. Again, having a reserve like we do is going to affect the interest rate on that bond we're going to go for. So again, having those monies set aside helps us in that regard. So again, things like those types of contingencies, different financial policies, and of course, things like reserves. If there's anything on public interaction and outreach, we've been trying to do more work with the league. Is there more work that council would like to see us do in terms of interacting with the public? Updates to the website, any kind of public information changes that we could do that you would be interested in pursuing? Various human resource management issues, again, we'll be talking about. benefits and compensation, as we always do. Anything that council might have in mind as it regards human resource management. We've got,
John, just to interrupt right there, that's what I had down along with recreation is, and I know we're gonna talk about it
right,
going forward, but, that's where I'd like to see a major focus with the merit pay possibilities, cost of living increases, something that's a little more standard and a little more, I don't wanna say competitive until we know how competitive we are, but, and then even with the benefits. And I know that's all coming up, but that's a
it
focus
is,
I'd
no,
like
but-
to see.
and it's a legitimate point. And again, by bringing it up as a point, it becomes an emphasis for the upcoming cycle. We will be discussing that, I think on the 14th, we'll have
Right.
a session on that, and we're gonna be bringing forward essentially what amounts to a 2-year plan on that. So one will be addressing the upcoming budget cycle, and then we'll be looking at the out year. So it's gonna be a two-part approach, so we will be discussing that.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that we can do. We have employee recognition. I think Tammy's on employee recognition. She's been kind of driving that bus for a while, out of necessity, I think. So there are a lot of layers to that cake that I would like to see us pursue in developing our human resources more fully. I've had conversations with our new HR director on that very issue. We probably will see more of an emphasis in the budget on training. It's something that I think has been lacking, and I think sometimes it shows. And so I think there's an opportunity for us to do more training, more recognition in various capacities. We do some things already. We have different events that we pursue. Those will be part of that guidance. And then also, from an organizational perspective, at some point, and again, I don't know that we're fully ready, but at some point, we need to start thinking more strategically about where we're going over time, so that when we do these guidance documents, that we're building towards something, and that we have some kind of a vision going forward. At some point, and I know we'll be doing, city manager goals and objectives here on the 3rd, at some point, I would like to see us start to maybe have some kind of a broader vision and some idea of what direction we want to go in. Even things like the human resources part would be part of that vision. Recreation would be part of that vision. And anything else that the council sees as a long-term goal that we can work on an annual basis to build logically and systematically over time, putting in documents like this where you're keeping a paper trail. And again, trying to expand on the expectations document that we created, which has a lot of this in it. So that we're creating continuity and we keep moving that forward. I think we've got some good fundamental pieces in place now. There's a lot more we can do. It's just a question of figuring out what we're really ready to go forward on. But really, with council getting some kind of a sense of that vision and where we're headed would be very beneficial in a document like this.
John, I wrote down my list right here that I want to be listening for this year. My first one is water. Water is very important. Water is very important. So, and then the retention of employees. Trying to keep a hold of them. I know that's on your mind, and I want to hear about that. We need to do something there. The next one is parks, streets. And then when we have our events during the year and stuff, I don't look to reduce the budget of the chamber.
Okay. Streets, specifically?
Streets upkeep, I'm not saying they're down right now, but keep on top painting them. My eyes are old. There's some places I need that road painted at night and the signs up. And they've been, Mr. Hills has been keeping up on it, but I don't want the ball to drop. And we got a new patching machine. Although the wand was $5,000, that's still a question. But anyway, I'll ask Mr. Henry later. But those are what I wrote down, and that's what I want to concentrate on myself.
Okay.
And one other one, John, that I want to focus on too is sidewalks in Tortilla Flats.
Okay.
I'm glad you mentioned water, because, water, I think, is a very important issue, because, in order for us to grow and attract, new business and everything else, the water and the conservation of our water, I think we need improvement, I'll put it that way.
We're talking about treating it possibly.
Yeah, we have a few items on the list. One of them is public outreach. I think there's some good ideas that Jason had talked about in terms of education, even going into the schools. I think an educational program is pretty innocuous, right? It's not intrusive, and it can play a large role in helping people understand conservation. When I was in Sierra Vista, we had programs where we literally gave out low flow fixtures, had a certain number of them. There's all manner of way you can approach it. And also, we will be going out and looking at rates, as we discussed. I'd like to get a consultant to come in and look at our rate structure, more or less the tiers. It's not really a revenue generation issue as much as it is trying to make our tiers sensitive enough to reflect usage more accurately.
That's important, we have to get that done.
So that's gonna be part of the budget process this year. So water certainly will be something we'll be looking at.
And you started out wanting the rainy day fund. I thought that was our fund balance. I thought that's what those were.
No,
No?
no.
You could describe that kind of as an emergency fund, something outside of it. That's something I myself, at our house, we have, whatever we have. But then underneath the mattress, we have, in case things really went bad, we have an emergency fund of cash in case we can't get to the bank. Don't look underneath the mattresses, because I already hid it. My wife, I don't know now.
What?
No, but, that's what you're referring to, isn't it? Something you can tap real quick.
Yeah, and it's more nimble. The fund is a policy that we say we need to have this amount of money. Well, by policy, it has to be there. So how can you use it if you have to meet that policy? So what this would do is take the money, so basically it has a cascading effect on how you break up your reserves, right? So that base is gonna be there and it's gonna support you, and it's really gonna be a security blanket in case things go wrong. I mean, it's your policy. But generally speaking, you're never gonna touch that money. It's gonna have an impact on your interest rates, it's gonna have an impact on your overall financial well-being. It's that security blanket. A rainy day fund or a stabilization fund would be much more nimble and would be used for, in the case of economic downturns, where you literally could use that money and have a policy that dictates how much it could be used and then how it would be paid back. So we would want to maintain that. And again, it would be a restricted fund balance that council would control. So its usage would be council controlled, and you would define, we would bring you, guidelines for that. You would look at those, and if you agreed, you would approve those. And then you would be the overseers of when that money's got used, and we would follow those policy guidelines.
Well, I ended up confused. I thought the fund balance was that, and now that we have them all, most of them, at the threshold we wanted to be at, that we were gonna get to spend some money.
No. Spend
Oh.
money? You're gonna wanna spend money?
I know that shocks you,
It does.
but I'll learn more. I'm sure you guys will
Well,
teach me more.
we can bring the idea, you can look at it, and again, it's council decision whether or not you wanna pursue it or not.
Very good. Any other comments or anything?
I have one. Oh, no, go ahead.
I just want to tag on to everybody who kind of wants to work on the water. I know we traded with Thatcher for a system that we don't use, and I don't know that it's usable, but it's kind of disheartening to see that water poured out on the desert out there, out of Fry Mesa. It's just running all over the ground, and it seems like a waste. I don't know what we paid for it, and I don't know what we traded for it, but that's something I'm pretty sure that you guys are looking at it. But also, I'd like to see us expand our sewer system into especially south and east, and try to get some of this water back. all these people are our customers, they're all buying our water, but our sewer system needs more flow so that it works better. And we need to get that water back and do the same thing we're talking about at the fairgrounds. Let's use reclaimed water. We're gonna be out of reclaimed water as soon as we start sending it to them. We've got to get some of this water back so that we can replenish and start using it in these other parks or wherever somebody wants it. We need to sell that water 2 and 3 times. The name of the game at some point is gonna be water here. This is the desert, and when we run out of water, we're finished. And I'd like to see us explore, we've got a lot of stuff, Solomon, San Jose, the prison out there. I mean, you're talking 7 miles of sewer mains, but we've done that before to go south. I really think maybe we even need to look at a policy where we're not gonna give you water unless we're gonna get some of it back. And we can steer development that direction. I don't think it's, I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but that's gonna be a big part of whether we can expand and survive. I do like the other stuff we were talking about, parks. We've already committed to it. Let's do it. I look forward to hearing from the committee that we put together. And I'll shut up now, but I'm kind of excited about some of the direction we're headed.
Yeah, they put a lot of time and effort in. I think you're gonna be surprised and pleased with what they put together. They got some good ideas. We got some really good work. Once we got it up and running, and they've really come up with some pretty good ideas, and they're working really hard on that presentation, so I think you'll be pleased with what you end up with.
Do you think any of the capital projects are gonna jump around and trade places?
They generally do. Of course, we've got ARPA funding that's gonna be part of that conversation, and with the final rule having been released, those funds now are treated much more as general fund money, which will open up some options for us in terms of usage. So that may fund some things. And again, I would like to see those be more general fund in orientation, because your rates already support your utilities. So putting that money into utilities, to me, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Your users are already covering those infrastructure needs, unless there's some glaring utility need that we need to address. It'd be nice to see those funds go more into the general fund and do general fund projects, so. But capital tends to jump around a bit. We cleaned up a bit last year, especially some of the problem you run into with a CIP is it ends up being a wish list, right? And it needs to be what's formerly known as a fully funded CIP. In other words, every year when I bring you a general fund number, it is based on a projection of revenue for the general fund. The CIP should be done the same way. Now, the funding streams are different, but you should be generating a 5-year fully funded CIP based on realistic estimates of the money you have to spend, right? So we took some of the projects that were developer driven and we moved them into an appendix so that they were outside the 5-year cycle. They didn't go away, they're still there and you can still see them. But what it's saying is that realistically the funding for those projects is not on our radar at the moment. So again, ultimately, and again, I'd have to work with Cabrina because it would be a financial thing to build a model that would fully fund your CIP. So projects do move, and we've tried to make it more realistic in terms of being able to fund those projects.
I didn't know where we were on taking water out the Lebanon Loop, if that was still something we
I
were
believe
doing.
it is, because that's grant
I think where we
funded.
don't have sewer also.
That's a grant funded project, and I think, Lance, we got the grant for Lebanon, didn't we? Yeah, so that's funded by, I think, USDA? Yeah, so I think that project is gonna move forward, because it wasn't gonna move unless we got the grant and we got it, so that's in the works. In fact, That grant also is, there's some work going on the Sanchez line that originally we thought we were going, in fact, it was driving the rates. Now it looks like that a substantial portion, and we don't have anything final yet, but it looks like a substantial portion of that may be driven by grant. So we may get lucky there and get a big part of that paid for, although we don't have any final numbers yet. That seemed to be what they were intimating at the time, so.
I didn't know if that was one of the target areas Mr. McCoy had in mind for sewer also, since we're possibly going out there with the water.
No, nothing in particular, but we already have a sewer line running through Thunderbird Hills, Thunderbird Valley. There's a lot of people out there, and that, we're not getting that water back, and I think maybe if we do try to expand anywhere, we ought to do it with that in mind. Let's put it where we can, put it where we can get it back. I mean, I know gravity has a lot to do with that, but there's some, we can change some of that.
Sure. Yeah, we take a look at that. Okay. And so just one last area that I wanted to bring up was economic development. We had somewhat of a buffet of programs that we were running for a while, and I think we can probably bring some of those back, maybe. I think it's worth discussing them again and to kind of reassess their relevance and where we are today and how much money remains in that economic development pool. I know we have $100,000 in the micro loan program that, I believe it might have been as of October that there was no loans that had been let. Now, obviously, COVID had an impact on that, but maybe it's time to revisit that $100,000 and maybe bring it back in and put it to different use. So it's worth a discussion, and I think it's worth discussing those programs to revisit with council just to see where we may want to go with that money. I know I've been having some conversations with the Downtown Association, in particular Danny, about maybe doing a little bit more in the downtown and maybe trying to reconfigure the way we fund that so that maybe we can put more substantial amounts of money in there. And again, I'm not talking ridiculous amounts of money, but a good focus in the downtown. We've got the entertainment district. I'd like to see us try to do things to move that forward as well. So I think it's worth having a discussion again on economic development and seeing where we are today and maybe what we can do with some of those funds.
I think that is a very important thing that we have to talk about, because it's needed. When people come by, I went down Main Street the other day and, and it needs some paint. Somebody has to do something. If they're, what do you call them, absentee owners or something, we have to look into those, what can we do? We must be able to do something. Pretty soon, some of the windows are have, plywood on them. At least if they do that, at least paint something on them. But we have to make the place look more inviting for people that walk downtown. Right now, it's, if the sun starts going down, you want to make sure you don't start walking. So, anyway, that's all I thought.
That's all I got.
All you got? Okay, because I don't want to hear these guys later if I keep you talking.
Well, I will bring back to you a budget guidance document that will incorporate the comments tonight. Some of these items I know staff has been working on already, so it's good that we're kind of on the same page. And then you'll get a look at that, and again, it's something that I'd like to have approved, because at that point, you're basically saying, these are our priorities and this is what we would like staff to focus on. So I'll bring something back at a subsequent meeting so that you can formally look at it and provide us with direction.
And I know if I don't speak up, staff will, because that's their job. So I'm not thin-skinned. Whatever ideas they bring up, I want to hear them.
Okay.
All right, then. And we'll need a motion to move on to the next item.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
We have a motion. A second. We're done. We have a second?
Second.
Not about time. All in favor?